Hey, welcome back to Project Build. Today's an exciting one as we're finally going to start remodeling this kitchen. And we're going to start by replacing that ugly work light with recessed lighting. Good boy, you did so good on camera. So we're going to start by taking the light fixture down. I'm going to take the bulbs down so I don't have a chance of breaking them. Then I'm going to take the light down. Before you take a light fixture down, you do want to make sure that the power's off there. So I have the switches off, and once I get up there, I will use a non-contact voltage tester just to make sure it's off. It's not a bad idea to go to your fuse box and flip the circuit breaker too. So now I'm just taking down the light bulbs so that I don't break them taking down the light. And then I'm going to take off the cover for the wiring and then just checking it, make sure it doesn't have power still, and then just taking down the toggle bolts that are holding the light. The next thing to do is to lay out where the recessed lights are going to go. I know I'm going to have two here, one over each countertop on each side of the stove, and then I'm going to have a couple more throughout the kitchen, kind of framing in the other counter over there and the fridge there, and then on the other side of the island over there. Well, we will put task lighting, pendant lights over the island at some point, but we're just doing recessed lighting right now. For recessed lighting, kind of a general rule that I found is that you want it at least a foot from any wall or cabinet. So for these cabinets here, I'm going to be putting the recessed lights 2 feet away from the wall so that the lighting is centered on the edge of the counter. So as you're standing working at the counter, the lighting will be coming down right in front of you where you're working. And that paired with under cabinet lighting will make a really visible work surface. Another rule of thumb is to have the lights spaced about half of the distance from your floor to your ceiling. We have 9-foot ceilings in here, so that means that I want the lights to be about 4.5 to 5 feet apart. All right, so let's get to marking them. All the lights in my kitchen are kind of relative to these first two that I'm marking. So I started by finding the center point of this wall, which is going to be in the center of those cabinets and the center of the stove. And then from there I went out 2.5 feet on each side so that the total distance between the lights was 5 feet. And then once I had those marked, I went 2 feet out from the wall on each side so that the light would be centered on the edge of the counter, as I previously had mentioned. I marked the two lights on the other side. I'm going to come over here to the other side of where the island is going to be. I'm going to mark 2 lights over here, and you'll notice that they're actually really close to this light fixture here, and you wouldn't want to do that normally, but I'm going to be moving this light fixture and putting lights over here in this window area, so this won't be a concern. I'm putting these lights so they frame in the island, and they're going to be just on the other side of where the end of the island is. And then once I put these 2 lights up, I'm going to add another one, splitting the difference between 4 lights. I'm going to figure out where these lights are going by following the joists. The joists in this kitchen run parallel to the length of the room. I'm putting in dimmable LED recessed lighting. This lighting is pretty neat in that it's going to be almost flush with the ceiling and that it has selectable color temperature. Using the switch, I can select between 3 different color temperatures, 3, 4, or 5K. Probably going to use the warm white 3K light, but we'll just test it out and see. So to put these in, we need to cut out a hole that is basically this size here so that this light can go up into the ceiling. And then these spring clips are actually what hold it up on the other side of the drywall, so we'll pull them back in and push it up. To cut these holes, they've provided a template. The problem with this template is there's no center point. So while these don't need to be exact and would like to be pretty precise, so what I'm going to do is show you how to mark the center of a circle. To mark the center of a circle, you're going to need something that lets you draw right angles and straight lines. So I'm going to be using my speed square. So what we're going to do is just take the speed square and mark a straight line across 2 of the edges of the circle, and that's called a chord. We're also going to need to mark the center point of that chord, so it's not a bad idea to try to draw that line at a easy to half distance. So I'm going to try to use the 1 and the 6 here so I can mark that center point at 2.5, because that's a 5-inch distance. So that's 1 chord. We need to do that again over here somewhere else. And you only need 2 cords to do this. You can add more, and that will give you a more accurate estimate, and I probably will end up doing a third. Once you have your cords, what you want to do is find the actual center point of both of those. And then once you have that center point, you want to take your right angle and then draw a line at a right angle to that cord that goes past the middle of the circle. And then do the same thing on the other one. And I've approximated this as the center of the circle. I'm going to go ahead and add another cord just to be as accurate as I possibly can, but this is a good enough estimate. I added the next cord, and you can see that I was just slightly off with the other two, but kind of averaging those, I can see that my center of the circle is right about here. Actually attach this to the ceiling, I'm going to use a push pin, or you could use some kind of brad, but I think everyone probably has a push pin. You're going to stick that through, and we will just take that and we will stick it right into the mark that we made earlier, and then draw an outline of this circle so that we can cut that hole out accurately. This part's really simple. Just take your circle and your push pin, stick it through the circle, push it up into the mark you made in the ceiling till it stays, and then draw the outline. And look, you get a circle. I've got the 4 holes marked, 2 on both sides that I need for the lights, and now I need to figure out where the lights are going in between these 2 set of lights that I have framing in my island. I've taken this distance and measured it, and I'm going to divide it by 3 and put 2 lights in. That distance is about 4.5 between each of those lights. So to actually figure out where those are going, we've measured from each light in. What we could do is measure from a common wall and figure out how far over they need to be so that they line up with the other 2 lights. Or something that I'm lucky enough to have as a laser level. With that turned on, I've got it lined up so that it goes through the center point of each of my holes. And so now it's going to be really easy for me to figure out exactly where I should put my lights. I wanted to show y'all what I'm actually going to be using to cut the circles in the drywall. There are drywall circle cutters, which is kind of like a drill bit with 2 blades on the end that exists, but they don't have very good reviews. At least I couldn't find any that I liked. So what I'm using is called a rotary cutter. It's also known as a drywall cutout tool. It's basically what used to be called a rotozip, and this is a drywall bit, and then you turn it on and it just rotates. What's nice about it is it has this depth collar adjustment, so I can set it, I have it set just to slightly over 1/2 inch that the drywall is, so when I go up there and cut the drywall out, it can't go through too far and possibly hit anything and damage it. So I've actually never used this, so let's give it a try and see how it does. I'm up at the ceiling, I'm ready to cut the hole, and if you've ever worked with drywall, you're probably thinking, where is your dust mask? And one quick shower of powder later, and I'm thinking, where's my dust mask? Ugh. Okay, that's better. To cut the hole out, I'm using a little bit of force as I move the tool, but just trying to let the tool do most of the work. I found it easier to pull the tool towards me instead of pushing it away, as I got better cuts from it and had more control over it. These rotary tools do have a tendency to kind of pull themselves wherever they want to go, so you want to make sure you have a firm grasp on the tool at all times. Once I had the entire circle cut out, I tried to push it up, but I hadn't cut through quite far enough, so I made the bit a little bit deeper and then went back around again just to cut out the rest of the paper on the back side of the drywall. And then once that was done, I just popped it out and 1 hole down and 5 to go. But it did feel like it got a bit easier. It went faster as I got better with the tool and cut more of the holes. With all the holes cut, I now need to run the wires for each of the recessed lights. Now this can be pretty easy or pretty hard depending on what type of joist you have. And I'll show you what I mean by that. For up here in the ceiling, we have open web trusses, so it's going to make running the wires pretty easy for me because there is this open space that I can put them through. If you have traditional solid joists, it's going to be harder because you're going to have to drill holes as you run the wires perpendicular to your joist. So our joists do run this way. If you had solid ones, you would be able to run the wires in between the joists down these holes, but you'd have to drill across the joist to get wires from there to there. So I'm not going to have to do that, but I will link some tools that I found in the description below that could help you do that. So before I actually put the lights up and run the wires, I wanted to show you how running the wires works and how they connect to the light boxes. So this is one of the light boxes, and it has a part here that will screw in to one of the actual lights. We have to take our Romex cable, and this is 14 by 2 since it's a 15 amp circuit, and we have to connect it to these connections in the box. So it's pretty simple to use. These are quick connects, so I just have to strip this insulation and strip these wires, and then you just push them in to these connections here, and then they stay in place. But we're going to want to open up one side of the box. So these are knockouts that are meant to come out real easily. Just take a flathead screwdriver and do that. And these are 1/2 inch knockouts. And with that out, we'll take a 1/2 inch push-in connector, and we'll actually put that into place so that when we stick our wire through, it'll hold it in place and keep it from popping out of the box. To strip our Romex, I'm going to take a utility knife and cut back a few inches, enough that we can actually get it into the box and have enough exposed wire. And I'm just cutting off the outer insulation here. And with that off and the wires exposed, I'm going to take wire strippers and use the 14 gauge stripper setting, and then strip away about 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch of the wire, so that it ends up looking like that. And we'll take these, and once they're up in the ceiling, I'll actually push them through the knockout. I'll take it out for now. I'll push it through, and then I will insert each of these into the appropriate quick connect connector, and it'll be pretty much installed. So to run the wires, I'm using 5.5 pre-cut section of Romex that I'm pulling through using a fishing tape. Fishing tapes are cool because they're rigid enough to actually go straight where you want them to, but also flexible enough to go around corners. On the end of the tape is a hole that you can push wires through and then hook them over so that you can pull without having to tape it down or anything. So once you have it hooked, you pull it and you reel it in from the other side, and then it just pulls up through and makes it way easier than trying to run it by using just the wire itself. And I'll just repeat the same thing for the rest of the holes. Before I finished doing all the wiring, I did a whole bunch of drywall work, which you can see right here. I also moved the wire for the light that was on the other side of the kitchen over to the nook over there, so it'll be out of the way of the recessed lighting. With all the wiring up there, it was time to put up the light boxes. So I'm just doing this how I explained earlier, putting the wires into the box and then attaching them to each other and putting them up in the ceiling. I will say it is probably easier to have your existing light power coming into the end of a circuit at one of the lights on the end. I was not able to do that just because of the length of the existing wire, but it would make it easier since you would only have the maximum of 2 wires coming in any box. I had 3 coming into this one right here, and that made it a lot harder to do. Now I'm doing the same thing for the rest of the lights. These all went much faster as I was only having a maximum of 2 Romex cables coming to each of these boxes, and there was just a lot more space in the box, and it was a lot easier to work with and hook everything up. I got all the lights wired up, so the only thing left to do is to plug each of these lights in and then put them up in the ceiling. So I'm not exactly sure which color temperature I want to go with yet, so I think I'm going to put the lights up and just kind of push the clips up like this so that they're held up in the ceiling, but they're not actually all the way up on the other side of the drywall, because each time you try to take one of these lights down, all this clamping force from these springs is going to pull down on the top of your drywall, and it could over time break that drywall as it pull it out. So I don't want to take it out if I don't have to. So I'm just going to put them up temporarily and get a feel for the lighting, and then decide what lighting color temperature I want to go with. So I'm just pushing the tabs up and putting them up against the side of the drywall and the holes, and then leaving the light there once it was secured enough to stay up on its own. I found myself getting pretty excited at this point as I knew how close I was to being able to actually see all the work that I have been doing come to fruition. Okay, all the lights are in, so Moment of truth. Yes, that is awesome. That looks great. Oh man, I'm excited. I've had the lights on for a little bit and I really do like this light temperature. I have it at 3K right now. If in the future I do decide to change it, I can always take the lights down to get to that little selector switch and change it. I prefer not to do that, but it's something I could do. So now what I need to do is I'm gonna go ahead and put those 3 lights over there and all the way. And I'm gonna leave these 3 for now, not all the way in, because I'm gonna be putting in another circuit so we can have island lights over the island on a separate switch in the coming weeks. And when I do that, I want to be able to get up and use these holes as access to run that wire. All right, I got those 3 lights in. These 3 I'm leaving temporarily like this, like I said, so I can run that other circuit in a future video. But this project is done. Something I'll definitely be doing in the future is replacing these 3-way switches with dimmer switches, because these lights look awesome. They are a little bright and I don't always want them this bright. It's really great because you can see, but it would be nice to be able to turn them down at certain times. That's all for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it and I hope that you learned something. If you did, and if you enjoyed the video, I hope you'll consider subscribing, because I still have an entire kitchen to remodel and I still have the entire basically rest of the house to do. So there is so much to come, and really even that's just the beginning of what I want to do. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.